Reconnect and heal today. Welcome to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Love Never Dies Radio on the Dream Vision 7 Radio Network and Dr. Turndorf Turn on the Love on Binge Network's television. So today we're talking about anxiety and whether the anxiety that is such a global epidemic is being caused by a poisoned gut. Are you suffering from a feeling of anxiety that's actually ruining your life? If you're worrying about everything and not feeling peaceful or safe, you may think that the only solution is medication or cognitive behavioral therapy, which is CBT. And all of these things can help you, of course, to manage the symptoms. But what if the real cause of your anxiety and your panic are the critters living in your guts, the microbiome community that you're hearing so much about now? And they are very often the cause of your distressed emotions. And did you know that toxin producing bacteria can make you feel wound up for no outside reason? And when you cultivate a healthy gut microbiome, it can produce all the neurotransmitters you need for a healthy state of mind and loving emotions too. That means not being overwhelmed with fears and anxiety. It means sleeping better. It means more clarity of mind and confidence. It means enjoying your life more. So today we're going to talk about the latest science on how you can alter your state of mind by balancing the bugs that live in your belly, thereby creating a sense of calm to strengthen and build resilience during these very challenging times. My guest today, you're becoming familiar with. I have her on now once a month. Sandy Sanderson, founder and CEO of Electromagnesium Skin and Muscle Care Products. She has a Bachelor of Arts degree with a specialty in marketing and business. And after years of chronic stress and deadlines, she developed severe heart arrhythmias and a health crisis that she resolved using transdermal magnesium. And this led her to the development of a natural magnesium delivery system, the transdermal via skin system, with products for all ages. So without further ado, welcome, Sandy.
Hi, good to be here.
It's wonderful to have you. And I know you're doing an heroic operation because it's 4 a.m. for you now.
Yep.
4 a.m. in Australia. So we really appreciate your setting your alarm and waking up. So we are going to talk about the gut-brain axis because it's so important, as we know, to the mental and physical health. So we know that apart from a denatured diet, stress has the greatest influence to disrupt the balance of the gut-brain axis. So you want to talk about how the microbial balance of the gut directly influences the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the HPA axis, the productions of hormones and neurotransmitters, our immune system. So would you like to start talking about that? Because that pretty much frames the whole topic.
Yeah, so it's a very large endocrine system, and through the vagus nerve, the whole digestive system has many nerves and is hypersensitive. And we don't really realize how much we rely on our gut bacteria to maintain a good gut with this nervous system. It's like one system. And if something goes wrong in the gut, then it directly affects our emotions, our feelings, our stress levels. And today in our modern society, we are suffering a lot more than ever with nervous system disorders and stress and anxiety type symptoms, which eventually lead to more serious diseases. And so we have about 100 trillion little critters, little microbes living in our body symbiotically with us, which is, about a lot more than our normal cells. I think it's 10 times more than our normal cells. And they have their own communication system. They actually talk to the brain. So sometimes when you're having cravings for particular foods, it may not really be you, it may be your microbes. So if you've got a lot of gut bacteria that love the sugar, such as our candida, which is a fungus, it's going to drive you to want to eat more sugar, more processed carbohydrates, which get turned into sugar in the body. And it's really not so good for you, but it's good for the little critters because they thrive on it. And they're giving you little signals and it's kind of telling the brain, you need those donuts.
Right,
when you don't need the donuts.
The bugs eat them and they send, the bugs are they almost have a human quality of the way they can send little messages saying, we're craving this, give us our food, we want our food.
Well, your most of your neurotransmitters in the brain come from the gut.
Wait a minute, I wanted to say, we just found out, I saw Caltech University now is saying it's 90% of the neurotransmitters are formed in the gut. We used to think it was 70, 80, now it's 90?
Yeah.
The gut controls it, yeah.
So that's right. So you can imagine if something's not right in the gut area, if you have digestive problems. So the gut's really one long tube, and we are kind of like a donut. So the digestive system, that long tube from your throat, your esophagus, into this little sac called the stomach, and then from there into the small intestine and the larger colon, and then out through the poop chute is one long tube. So we form after we're a zygote, after the egg and the sperm are fertilized and the cells divide. Eventually it forms into a donut shape, and the donut shape becomes a little baby. And so the whole digestive system is that hole through the donut. So the inside, what we think is the inside, is still really just the outside. So our skin, our outside epidermis, our outside epithelial lining, membrane, it has a lot of similarities to the inside of the tube that goes down through the digestive system. And both are membranes that can absorb. However, your inside tube is a lot finer and more sensitive and has even more nerve endings. And it's covered with a kind of, in the intestine, a mucin layer, which is a jelly-like slippery layer, so that all your food stuffs can kind of slip through and move through a little bit more easily. And then and the wall of that lining has what's called smooth muscles, and they expand and contract. And when you're moving the food downwards, it kind of pushes a little bit. And the little microbes actually excrete substances that help you push a little bit further and a little bit further. So that's the motility of things going through fast enough. So a lot of people have different kinds of digestive disorders, and their gut microbiome can be made up of 1,000 different colonies of different kinds of bacteria, fungus, protozoa, archaea, lots of different, and even sometimes parasites. But if you have a really healthy microbiome, and the healthiest microbiome, so microbiome is all the critters, all the microorganisms in the body. And by the way, your skin is the second largest collection of microbiome. So the whole of your body is the microbiome. When they refer to microbiota, that's specifically the gut microbiome. So so you have about, the more diverse the gut microbiome colonies, lots and lots of different competition, the healthier the system. They've actually done studies all around the world in different geographical regions with indigenous tribes and their different kinds of foods that they would eat from the environment, because researchers were interested to see, how are these colonies made up and how do they balance themselves and where do they come from? And they found that healthy people had the most diverse microbiome in the gut. So they had just a lot more variety. And the sickest, or the people more prone to illness, were the ones that had not much diversity in the microbiome, and they were dominated by pathogens. So they're disease-causing bacteria. They produce a lot more acid, so they're used to a more acid environment, and which is anaerobic. And they're acid-producing they produce a substance called lipopolysaccharides, which is acidic and toxic. They exist all the time, but in a healthy microbiome, they're bad guys that don't make much difference because they're dominated by the really good bacteria, such as predominantly lactobacillus and bifidobacteria, seem to be the most common dominant healthy bacteria, and they bring on board other friendlies. So they have friends bacteria that are associated with them. They're like families that like families, and they're like-minded communities. And they're the police to keep the bad guys under control. And they also produce, a lot of neurotransmitters. They look after the gut. They clean the little villi on the inside of the intestinal lining and keep everything in good condition. And they help produce more mucin and essential fatty acids.
They're not acidic byproducts. They're more alkalizing byproducts from the good.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. And so, and they also look after our immune system, which mainly is produced in the gut as well. So if you have a healthy microbiome and you happen to come across someone who sneezes and coughs on you with something, like a flu or whatever, and you have a strong microbiome, which means you have a strong immune system, instantly your good soldiers inside spring into action, and they start to control and trigger the mechanism of the immune system to produce antibodies. And you mightn't even realize that you have those bad bugs that have entered your body because you don't even get symptoms, or you might get very low, hardly noticeable symptoms. And that's a strong immune system, and that indicates a very healthy gut.
Yeah.
So we owe a lot.
I mean, we're learning more and more. This is like the decade of really starting to understand more about the human microbiome, which we didn't really know about in the last decade. I was thinking about the vicious cycle, the catch-22, because the bugs, when they poop the acidic byproducts, it's so corrosive to the mucosa that, how when you scratch your skin, it's easier for bugs to multiply because the skin isn't intact. It's the same inside. Now you're torn up by the acid, so it makes it harder to get rid of the bugs. You get into a catch-22.
It's funny you should say that, because commensal symptoms that happen at the same time as a disrupted microbiome in the gut are also skin lesions. So that the inflammation in the skin, which could be like eczema type, psoriasis type symptoms, rashes, they're all an indicator that something's not right in the gut. And the liver's not coping because there's a toxic overload. So the poor liver has to try and process these waste products and get rid of them. And if you've got too much coming in and they're getting the toxic wastes are getting inside of the body, through that tube.
Okay, so
and that's what's called leaky gut.
Leaky gut, there you go. So the tight junctions get torn up. So leaky gut, intestinal permeability, stuff that should go out, and it gets reabsorbed and then puts this burden on the liver.
Yeah, and scientists have found a predominance of lactic acid producing bacteria with people that have the lesions and that's actually, so it's a disease progression. So that's ulcerative colitis or associated Crohn's disease. They're slightly different, but basically we'll look at them the same way, that the tight junctions have loosened up and the mucus lining of the gut wall is also deteriorated and thin and not functioning as enough of a buffer, because the D-lactic acid has started to eat into that lining of the intestine. And what happens is the waste products then in the colon can get access where they normally wouldn't and pass through that looser barrier. And as you said before, that's like having a scratch or something. You've opened up the outside skin barrier, and if you're not careful and you don't clean that wound, some bad bacteria may get in, like staphylococcus, and that may proliferate and cause more inflammation and discomfort and, difficulty healing. It's not going to heal very quickly if you have a predominance of the bad bacteria.
And you know what else too people don't realize is the chronic fatigue and the fibromyalgia is really coming from the toxins that are being reabsorbed, causing inflammation in the joints and the soft tissue. And they always say, oh, we don't know what causes it, but really it's the gut and the leaky gut.
It is because what happens is these acids pass through into the blood, and the more LPS, so lipopolysaccharides that circulate in the blood, they eventually weaken the blood-brain barrier and make it thinner, and it can pass into the brain, and they can make us feel really cranky, irritated, anxious or fearful, and also depressed. So a lot of the mental illness signs and symptoms actually start off with a disrupted gut. And then, of course, if nothing's done about it, it's not fixed, it gets worse and worse into other kind of disease progressions. So it's really important to look after your gut.
The things that get people in the Western world, the diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancers, all start with the leaky gut, the microbiome, the overgrowths.
Yes. And so what it is basically inflammation traveling through the bloodstream to the whole of the body, the whole system. And so bugs, not only their byproducts, but the actual bacteria can actually get ingress and move to other parts of the body. So Staphylococcus is one of the nasties that can do that and migrate. So if it travels up into the chest area, you can get bronchitis and lots of, lung type of diseases. If they travel to the bladder, you can get bladder infections. And so it depends where the bacteria travel to, where they kind of nest and settle, and then they trigger an inflammatory response because they're foreign critters, they're foreign substances that shouldn't be there, and the body's immune system goes, oi, I've got to fix something here, send in the troops, send in leukocytes and lymphocytes, all the white blood cells, and then you get an inflammatory response which causes swelling and pain and inflammation.
And the allergies.
Allergies, absolutely. Allergies also stem from partly digested foods. So this is another problem further upstream in the digestive system, where the stomach is not creating enough stomach acid to kill bugs which do come in with the food that we eat. Normally, your thyroid, if it's working well, would be stimulating the production of stomach acids, for which you need magnesium and chloride and zinc and B group vitamins and vitamin K. I think I've said all of them, but all of these elements need to come together to make stomach acid. A lot of people are finding they've got lower stomach acid, and one of the biggest things that suppresses the stomach acid are things that suppress the thyroid, which is fluoride, which is endemic in the food supply and the water supply. So fluoride suppresses the thyroid. Therefore, you'll be producing less stomach acid. Therefore, you're not going to kill the bad bugs that might get through and not digest the food properly. And if the food's not digested properly, you can then get allergies because they are foreign proteins that move into the intestine, which shouldn't be there. And you can have a lot of problems then with food getting stuck in the small intestine because the motility slows down. You're not digesting the food properly. It's not moving through the tube quickly enough. And as the food sits there and it churns and churns, well, first of all, if it churns in the stomach too long, you'll be getting GERD and reflux, so acid reflux coming up the esophagus. It's not because you've got too much acid, because you've got not enough acid and it's sitting in the stomach too long.
That is like so
to ferment.
That is what is so, is people don't get it. The mainstream treatment for, okay, so you don't have enough acid, hydrochloric acid, to break down the food. So it sits there, and eventually, very late in the game, the stomach says, wait a minute, we got to start producing acid to break this down somehow, but it's too late in the game. And then you get the reflux and the GERD. So when you suppress the acid, you're actually making the problem. When you take a drug to suppress the acid production, you're not treating the underlying low acid problem that is the real issue, and you're creating a worse problem now, because with the lower stomach acid, the bugs go to town. They need the acid to be killed.
That's right. So let's assume your stomach acid needs to be around 2 pH, which is very acid, to digest proteins, which are, more difficult to digest and need a higher level of acid compared to vegetables. So if you're only making maybe 4 pH, it's not enough to get down to that level. And then it's churning and churning. The food is staying in the stomach too long. It's churned and it's chyme and turned into mush, but the pH is not right. So if you then take even bicarb soda, which is a great neutralizing, alkalizing buffer, like other antacids, what it does, it brings the pH back up to neutral, and that's enough to trigger the little valve under the stomach to open up and let the contents into the small intestine, because small intestine has a very thin, sensitive wall and cannot have high acid from the stomach touch it. So there's a little valve to make sure that the food stays in the stomach and doesn't go further.
You're talking about the LES, the lower esophageal.
The LES.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so let's take a break, because I want to talk about this. It seems like a catch-22 where you need enough acid to move the food along. If there's not enough acid, the LES doesn't open and let the food go through, but you also need a more alkaline environment to move the food through. So let's clarify that when we come right back. We'll be back in a moment on Love Never Dies Radio, on Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, and Dr. Turndorf, Turn on the Love on Binge Networks TV. Hi, it's Dr. J.B. Turndorf here. Are you feeling stressed, tense, jumpy, jittery, anxious, or having panic attacks or angry outbursts or disturbed sleep? Are you worried that you or someone you love is going to get sick or even die? Are you depressed and feeling hopeless, like the world is coming to an end? Or are you suffering aches and pains or stiff muscles, low energy, or falling into self-damaging or addictive behaviors like binging on junk food, the internet, or TV, or abusing drugs or alcohol, or not eating right, or exercising, feeling like, what's the point? If you said yes to any of my questions, you are likely suffering what I call the global PTSD pandemic stress syndrome triggered by the coronavirus pandemic. Don't despair. My energetic system upgrade is your rescue remedy for the panic epidemic that is plaguing our world. The energetic system upgrade has already helped some of today's top leaders. Now you can experience your own energetic system upgrade healing transformation. To find out more and to schedule your session, visit drjamieturndorf.com/energetic system upgrade. That's Dr. Jamie Turndorf, TURNDORF.com/energetic system upgrade.
Love Never Dies is now on the Dream Vision 7 radio network every Wednesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. and 1 a.m. Eastern Time. Dr. Jamie Turndorf, also known as Dr. Love, is the #1 international best-selling author of Love Never Dies, How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased. If you're grieving the loss of a loved one, tune in and find out how to reconnect and heal any unfinished business using Dr. Turndorf's groundbreaking new Dialoguing with the Departed technique. Visit AskDrLove.com to find out more.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
You're listening to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. If you yearn to get along better with your life partner or spouse, friends, family members, and even coworkers, Dr. Turndorf's book, Kiss Your Fights Goodbye, Dr. Love's 10 Simple Steps to Cooling Conflict and Rekindling Your Relationship, shows you how to turn conflict into connection for a lifetime of lasting love. Find out more about Kiss Your Fights Goodbye at AskDrLove.com. This is Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. This show is for you, the listener. Once again, here's Dr. Turndorf.
Hello again, and welcome back to Love Never Dies Radio on Dream Vision 7 Network and Dr. Turndorf, Turn on the Love on Binge Networks TV. We're also streaming live on YouTube. So, Sandy, just before we took the break, we're talking with Sandy Sanderson about how disturbed microbiome can be the underlying cause of your stress, your anxiety, and your panic. So right before the break, we were talking about the fact that the low thyroid function that is so epidemic causes lower production of hydrochloric acid. Without the acid, the lower esophageal sphincter, the LES, doesn't open up and the motility shuts down. Now the food sits in the gut and putrefies and is the source of bugs, overgrowth, and so on. So you were saying before how if you add the bicarbonate, you can help the sphincter to open up. So this might be confusing to people watching and listening. Well, if I need acid in order to have the food move through and not sit there and rot and grow bugs, well, then how is taking bicarbonate, which is going to lower the acid, help open up the sphincter and move it along? So maybe you could explain that.
Yes, you should only take the sodium bicarbonate on an empty stomach. If you've got something in there, you want acid in there, such as apple cider vinegar. So if you've got some issues with generating enough stomach acid, there are digestive enzymes that you can get, such as betaine hydrochloride and apple cider vinegar. There are quite a number of digestive aids, food, and even sauerkraut. Traditionally people would have fermented vegetables which have that soury, acidic fermentation, which kicks off the digestive system and helps everything along. So what you want to do is and if there is an issue, avoid tightly packed proteins, eat more slow, low cooked soups, and until the body regenerates a better microbiome, help it out with lighter foodstuffs that are easier to digest, plus some digestive aids. Once the chyme is fully made into a mush and the food is properly digested with the acids, so acids break things down. That's what we want acids in the stomach for. Someone asked me the other day, why doesn't the stomach acid break down the lining of the stomach? Well, that's because the stomach lining has a good mucus lining, which is made up a lot of bicarb soda that comes from the pancreas. So the pancreas injects stuff through glands in the stomach that line our stomach. So for the period of time that you're digesting food, it's fine and it's not getting through to the interior. However, if that food stays in the stomach too long and there's enough acids and the length of time gets too long, you can actually erode away the lining of your stomach, and that's called a stomach ulcer. And then you get Helicobacter pylori, which is one of the main bacteria that's always in your stomach, but it starts to proliferate and get bigger and bigger, and it's part of that ulcer structure. So you don't want all that. Then as a byproduct of excessive stress, chronic stress, all of these symptoms of digestive issues initially are caused by trauma or chronic stress. So when you're feeling tight and anxious and stressed, something's stressed you, your whole digestive system kind of locks up and the smooth muscles get tight. If you don't have enough magnesium, you can't relax and you stay tight. things aren't working, things kind of just freeze. I'm sure people have all had that feeling of like a shock, or just feeling stressed, and they're not even aware that they're holding their body. All their muscles are just tight. And so when you lose the flexibility, when you don't have enough magnesium, and you lose that smooth muscle control. So getting back to the stomach, by introducing digestive enzymes and helpful acids that help you digest the food, then you get to a stage where now my food's digested. How do I get it into the small intestine? Because this valve is not opening while the pH in the stomach has too much acid. It's still maybe 2, 3, or 4. It's not quite enough to open that valve up. And usually the pancreas at that stage injects bicarb soda into the stomach to neutralize it. So if your pancreas is working well, it's all automatic. It then injects the bicarb soda, neutralizes the chyme, which is the mushed up food in the stomach. The valve opens and it moves to the next level, which is the small intestine. Small intestine is where we absorb almost all of the nutrients in the food that we eat, because it's nicely mulched. And the lining of the small intestine needs to have an alkaline pH, because it's quite sensitive, and it helps it absorb and digest properly. And it has some bacteria, but they're minimal, and the body can cope, and it's not a big deal. They don't have a big impact. So then you absorb the food from the small intestine, and it travels further through other valves into the bigger colon, where the more bacteria get everything ready to launch into the garbage bin, which is the loo. And so they then stimulate the peristalsis to then, and you have an urge and you have to go. And so that's what should happen normally. But what happens is that if you've got some partly digested food in the small intestine, it's had somewhat enough alkaline input to open that valve up to let it through. It now has food which isn't quite right for absorbing all the nutrients. So then you start to get deprived of nutritional absorption through the gut lining, which is what should happen in the small intestine. Small intestine then is overloaded, and it's somehow got to deal with this food that's not quite fully digested. And guess what happens? The bacteria that's come through with it go, yay, we can have lunch. And they go to town and start eating and feeding and growing colonies. And small intestine shouldn't have that many bacterial colonies in there. And they start making a nice home in there. So when that happens, that's called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO for short. So that's already an advanced system of digestive disorder, which is downstream of when you first got your leaky gut and first got problems with stomach digestion. So it kind of goes stomach digestion, leaky gut, and then the last in the trio is the SIBO. So people can have constipation, diarrhea. They can have symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome without necessarily having SIBO yet. But if nothing's done about those irritable bowel symptoms, then eventually it can migrate, and bacteria then travel even from the lower colon into the small intestine, because these valves get quite loose. Things are completely disrupted.
So that's when you reach this stage, now you have the ileocecal valve disruption. So the poop that's supposed to stay in the colon backs up into the small intestine.
Well, it can, and that's another progression in the system, that everything gets too loose and the valves don't work like they should. So everything relies on this balance between acid and alkaline. So your cells, the inside of your cells need to be more alkaline, like the blood plasma, 7.25, 7.35, 7.45, sorry. So that's slightly into the alkaline range for the inside of cells, and that makes the charge differential work well because the outside of the cell has got positive charges, and the cell differential makes the cell membrane work better. That's what holds the elements inside the cell that need to be inside the cell, which is mainly magnesium and potassium and chloride, and they help make everything, all the transport inside the cells work between the organelles, so that relies a lot on charge differential. And if that internal cell environment gets too acidic because things are breaking down from acids where they shouldn't be, then you get a leaky membrane in the cell. You start to lose your magnesium and potassium and water, and the cells become dehydrated. And so this disease progression then moves to other parts of the body. So what you might first feel is just low or depressed or feeling of anxiety and stress, are likely symptoms of magnesium deficiency, because your gut microbes need the magnesium as well. And preserving a good healthy microbiome relies on good food, good digestion of the food, so you can pull the magnesium and the zinc and all the other good nutrients out, and then make your B group vitamins. And bear in mind, our healthy gut microbiome also help us make vitamin B12, which is very important for the central nervous system and the brain. So all of these systems get disrupted, all triggered by stress right at the beginning. It's like a tree with branches, and the branches just move out and out and out. And what happens with modern society is we go to the drugstore and we get stuff over the counter that treats the little branches that can cause more problems, such as interfering with your stomach acid when you shouldn't interfere with your stomach acid. And then we cause more problems downstream in the digestive system. So ideally, we need to come back to the trunk of that tree and make sure we're getting all our minerals. And if you can't digest food properly, get some digestive aids, and modify your diet. Definitely don't eat processed foods, junk foods, and with pesticides and chemicals.
And the other thing too is a lot of people who develop irritable bowel, SIBO, reflux, GERD, are eating grain. And grain is so implicated in these digestive problems.
This is true. So there's a lot of research being done recently into the effect of glyphosate. So it's one of the most notorious pesticides used, and it's very ubiquitous in the food supply now, because it's not just used with genetically modified foods, such as what it was initially. So even if you think, oh, well, this is not genetically modified, non-GMO, they still may have used glyphosate as a desiccant to dry up the wheat or the soy or the corn. Has to be dried up to get to market faster. So they use it as a drying agent, and that substance migrates into the inner part of the grain. You can't wash it off. Yeah. It's in there. So when you grind it up and make flour or whatever you make from it, it's in every food that you make with it.
And that's stuff that tears up the gut. Listen, we have to take a break, Sandy, because there's more to be said about this. We could talk for 3 years on the topic. Let's just take a quick break. We'll be back with you in a moment on Love Never Dies Radio on Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, and Dr. Turndorf, Turn on the Love on Binge Networks TV. It's Dr. J.B. Turndorf here. Are you feeling stressed, tense, jumpy, jittery, anxious, or having panic attacks or angry outbursts or disturbed sleep? Are you worried that you or someone you love is going to get sick or even die? Are you depressed and feeling hopeless like the world is coming to an end? Or are you suffering aches and pains or stiff muscles, low energy, or falling into self-damaging or addictive behaviors like binging on junk food, the internet, or TV, or abusing drugs or alcohol, or not eating right, or exercising, feeling like what's the point? If you said yes to any of my questions, you are likely suffering what I call the global PTSD pandemic stress syndrome triggered by the coronavirus pandemic. Don't despair. My energetic system upgrade is your rescue remedy for the panic epidemic that is plaguing our world. The energetic system upgrade has already helped some of today's top leaders. Now you can experience your own energetic system upgrade healing transformation. To find out more and to schedule your session, visit drjamieturndorf.com/energetic system upgrade. That's Dr. Jamie Turndorf, TURNDORF.com/energetic system upgrade.
Love Never Dies is now on the Dream Vision 7 radio network every Wednesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. and 1 a.m. Eastern Time. Dr. Jamie Turndorf, also known as Dr. Love, is the #1 international best-selling author of Love Never Dies, How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased. If you're grieving the loss of a loved one, tune in and find out how to reconnect and heal any unfinished business using Dr. Turndorf's groundbreaking new Dialoguing with the Departed technique. Visit AskDrLove.com to find out more.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
You're listening to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. If you can't stop crying over the bodily loss of a loved one, Dr. Turndorf's #1 international bestseller, Love Never Dies, How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased, will show you how to toss out the tissues and transform your grief into joy using her groundbreaking new Dialoguing with the Departed technique that enables you to reconnect and even heal unfinished business with those in spirit without the assistance of a medium, channeler, or psychic. Sign up for Dr. Love's free newsletter at AskDrLove.com and receive an exciting gift, a free excerpt of Love Never Dies. And now, back to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf.
Hello again, and welcome back to Love Never Dies Radio on Dream Vision 7 Radio Network and Dr. Turndorf, Turn on the Love on Binge Networks TV. I'm talking with my dear Sandy Sanderson about how a poisoned gut can be messing up your mood and making you nervous. So, Sandy, before we took the break, we were talking about how grains contain residue. Even the non-GMO grains contain residues of glyphosate. But even the organic food can contain residues. We found that out when they use conventional manure. Then the pesticide residues in the conventional manure make their way even into organic produce and grains. So
yes, it's very sinister. Even farms, an organic farm might have another farm next door, and the wind can even carry that glyphosate over. It's really diabolical when you think about what it potentially does. So it kind of starves off the shikimate pathway, which is a kind of respiration pathway in plants and bacteria. So we don't have it in our human cells, but the problem is that we need our bacteria in our gut, which are like our garbage disposal system. They process our wastes and toxins, which is a great benefit and help to the liver. And if something happens to those bacteria and they can't process the wastes, we get a massive toxic load building up that the liver can't cope with. And that's what kind of happens. The glyphosate is a pesticide. It kills bacteria. And once it gets into the gut, it's going to affect your good gut microbiome. And funnily enough, it favors the bad guys. It leaves them alone. Go figure.
So let's get practical now, and let's talk about like actionable steps that people can take to fix their microbiome, reverse their IBS, because I see the research says up to 78% of IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, is caused by SIBO. So what can we do to reverse the SIBO that is so plaguing everyone, fix the microbiome, and by consequence, help our mood lift, our immune system, our
Yes.
regulate. So what can we do? Let's get real practical.
So you can't launch straight into, usually you can't launch straight into the ideal diet, because the ideal diet has more complex carbohydrates in, which can also feed the bad guys as well as the good guys, and that can produce more gas. So the bad bacteria tend to produce, there's an association with the production of more hydrogen sulfide gas. So you get very bloated and distended digestive system. You know, you can sometimes look pregnant when you're not, like a massive big belly of air. And that's uncomfortable and makes people feel miserable.
And you feel like it's the immaculate conception. You didn't,
yes.
you know, you're just pregnant, and you're postmenopausal and you're pregnant. It's horrible, and it causes GERD because the gas pressure can shoot up and, you know, open the LES and give you, it's
yes, and there's scientists have found an association with this hydrogen sulfide gas when it's overly produced, even though it's not really all that good for you. A little bit is fine, but when it's overly produced, it can become quite toxic. But then it has this flip side to it, in that people who overly produce it have usually a problem with conversion of sulfur to sulfate, and sulfate is an element we need to help detox us and move the waste products out. It's like a transport system.
Right. So let's talk about how to eat, what supplements will help, because with SIBO, you can't take the regular probiotics, the lactose strains, feed the bugs. So
yes. So people are producing a lot of this gas will probably need to go on a low FODMAPs diet. So you can look this up online. You get lists of foods. The FODMAPs usually, it's, you know, in a lot of vegetables and fruits, and they tend to trigger more massive gas bubbles. So if you have low of those kinds of foods, then you minimize the gases. But it's only a temporary measure. It's really just treating some symptoms for a while till you get other things going. You really have to address the bad bugs that have made their home in that small intestine and try and get rid of them. So there are some very good practitioners out there that have worked out, you know, bitter herbs and certain natural remedies that can kill those bacteria. And also
to oregano, you know, the botanicals like neem, oregano, those things, or yes, the antibiotic rifaximin with the hydrolyzed guar gum, if you want to go.
Yes, some very promising research with a targeted antibacterial, antimicrobial. Normally, when we have a broad spectrum antibiotics, it like kills all of the bacteria, and that's no good. And that causes a lot of other problems and side effects. But if you have something that targets a particular microorganism and leaves the other good guys alone, that's much better. So this is why they're having some good results with rifaximin. It only needs to be a relatively short-term course, and then immediately followed up with some good bacteria. Once you've cleaned up the small intestine of what shouldn't be there, then you need to start putting some lactobacillus bifidobacteria in there, and they travel through the digestive system, and also eat, as I mentioned before, soups and very easy to digest foods, so it doesn't stay in the stomach and the small intestine too long. It increases motility because you've got more hydration. The food is already partially digested and broken down because of the slow and low cooking process. Everything is very soft. And so you need to go to a kind of a diet which is low carbohydrate. But when you have carbohydrate, they need to be complex, which means vegetables. Vegetables are complex because they've got vitamins, minerals, enzymes. They've got an indigestible fiber element to it as well, which creates a kind of a broom sweeping through the intestine. You need to have something which the fiber holds the water, and the water creates hydration, which helps wash things through. Also, extra magnesium helps, because I'm not talking about a huge amount. So people who use magnesium as a laxative, that's okay if you use it as a laxative, but it's not going to get a lot through the gut wall in high concentrations. But definitely good to put a little pinch of magnesium chloride salt flakes into per liter of drinking water, because that mineralizes the water and it makes the water more hydrating. So everything passes through the body and through the cells more thoroughly when it's got magnesium present, and the cells hydrate. Everything hydrates better. Magnesium draws water to itself, and that's in high doses. That's why it causes diarrhea, because it's attracting water in an otherwise quite dry and maybe constipated environment. That's what gives people, if they don't have the hydration and the feces get stuck in that dry environment, like pelletized and dry, too much of the toxic waste from that passes back through that leaky gut, and causes headaches, and even migraines. So you want to move the food particles through quickly, relatively quickly, and that means to introduce the minerals, the water. Drink plenty of water. A lot of people actually don't drink enough water. That's another problem, because the body needs hydration, and sometimes we lose the thirst mechanism. We don't remember to drink, and we don't even feel the urge to drink, but the body may be extremely dehydrated because it's not used to drinking water, and it got used to a dehydrated state. So you want to get
older,
used to a hydrated state.
When you get older, you can lose the urge to drink. Yeah.
And you'll notice when you drink the mineral water, as soon as it hits the stomach, your brain gets a lift, because the brain uses half the water that you drink in the body. It's got the most electrical activity. There's lightning bolts going on all the time in the brain, even when you're sleeping and you think you're out. It's processing, and there's electrical activity, and it needs water and it needs minerals for that electrical activity. And so when we're not drinking enough, the brain starts to get lethargic and foggy and depressed.
And the magnesium will also help regulate the microbiome, help eliminate the bad bugs, if nothing else, by just increasing motility, because we know slow motility helps the bad bugs to proliferate. So we can flush and move things along more.
Yes, so it becomes energized. So magnesium is used by the mitochondria to make energy. So they're ATP, adenosine triphosphate molecules. There are little energy batteries of the cells. So when you have plenty of magnesium, you start to generate more electrical system energy. That also applies to our good microbiome. They also need magnesium. All life needs magnesium for its electrical energy. So they also wake up and go, oh, guys, we've got a job to do. We've got water, we've got magnesium, we've got stuff coming in that we need. We can start to clean up this mess. And so it's a question of balancing everything, the right kind of food. Just treat the symptoms in the beginning. You've got to coax it. It doesn't all happen overnight. You've got to just take steps.
We have to get off these proton pump inhibitors, the drugs this is like the most commonly prescribed thing, the Protonics, the Nexium. You cannot correct the microbiome and get rid of SIBO if you're taking these acid blocking drugs, the proton pump inhibitors. You got to get off of it, and instead take betaine hydrochloride, as you said, apple cider vinegar, digestive enzymes, digestive bitters, the Ibero gas, which is the bitters, and they help them. You can't get better if you're on that drug. You just can't.
Yes, and it makes things a little bit easier, and you can minimize the gassiness until the good microbiome kick in. Now, eventually you won't need all of that stuff, but you can just rely on your good food and have your little portion of sauerkraut you know, apple cider vinegar or whatever, you kind of develop. There are certain genotypes which are also more prone to digestive disorders. I have a personal theory. I think it's just is it the A personality, the one that like worries about everything all the time?
But also too, if you were, you know, like we haven't talked about my case, maybe as time goes on, we can discuss it. I mean, I lived on antibiotics for the first 10 years of my life. So if you overuse antibiotics, you just strip away all the good guys. Even if you're the most Zen person in the world, that's a huge like nuclear bomb to your bowels, you know?
Yes, and what it does is it becomes a big snowball where there's a negative feedback loop. So then you've killed off the good gut bacteria. The bad guys come back and they become resistant because they're very good at adapting. And then because fungus like candida compete with bacteria, if you've killed the bacteria, you'll end up with a candida overgrowth. And candida is a fungus that loves sugar. It's going to make you want more carbs. So you go for the, you know, you can get like ravenous and cranky if you don't get your sugar. This is the candida doing this, not you.
It's not
that's making you cranky.
Right.
It's the bad bugs.
We only have 2 minutes left. I want to make sure everybody has a parting message from you and to be clear on how to find you and how to find electrotransdermal magnesium. I don't sell it, so you can't find it from me. I'm not a distributor. I just spread the word because I truly believe in the healing miracle of your electromagnesium. So
the first thing to do is to relieve the body of all those stresses naturally. The most natural way is to feed your body with magnesium. And of course, you can't rely on your digestive system if it's got a problem. So you definitely will get more magnesium through your skin. You can get magnesium lotion, magnesium oil, magnesium cream, lots of different strengths of magnesium for your skincare as well. It's beautiful, all natural, no chemicals, from electramagnesium.com.au. That's with a K, ELEKTRAMAGNESIUM.com.au. And we have lots of videos, articles as well, and explanation about how to use the products. So please come and explore, and they're not overly expensive. We have a philosophy that everyone should be able to afford it, you know, even something and give each other a massage and, you know, relax. The whole family can benefit, your kids, everybody in the family, elderly, all ages are today deficient in magnesium and really benefit a lot by calming down the whole nervous system. As soon as you put it on, it's fast. It works really well.
It switches you out of the HPA axis dysfunction into the peaceful parasympathetic mode, and it makes the neurotransmitters that make you calm and mellow.
Yes, so it helps to reset. I'm
going to go put my magnesium on right now. So I'm going to just say goodbye for now and to be continued. And we'll see you next time on the show. And everyone, just be well, be peaceful. Let the electromagnesium help you get there sooner than later.
Thanks, Jamie.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.